This is Professor Joe, your education advocate. Let me discuss the rationalist and empiricist views of knowledge and how to reconcile them. The fundamental question of epistemology is, how is knowing possible? This fundamental question has captivated thinkers for centuries, from ancient philosophers pondering the nature of reality to modern scientists probing the mysteries of the universe. The search for knowledge has become the center of philosophical endeavor. Understanding the origins of our beliefs and the foundations of knowledge takes the heart of this project. Our journey takes us to the heart of a debate that has shaped Western thought: rationalism versus empiricism. These two schools of thought offer contrasting perspectives on the sources of our knowledge and the limits of human understanding. This exploration is not merely an academic exercise, it has profound implications for how we approach education, law, medicine, other sciences, politics, and everyday life. Let us start with the debate. How is knowing possible? Is the main question. Two schools of thought arise. One is empiricism, and the other is rationalism. In empiricism, it is common to think that experience involving our five senses is the source of knowing. Knowledge comes to us through experience. Francis Bacon of the 16th century was considered the father of empiricism. He argued for the possibility of scientific knowledge based only on inductive reasoning and careful observation of natural events. The other school of thought, rationalism, argues that the intellect or reason makes us know. In the absence of mental operations, we do not know something. These distinctions between the two sources of knowledge can be drawn from the primary reference to their objects of knowing, like our sense experience, which allows us to acquire knowledge of external objects. In contrast, our awareness of our mental operations is responsible for acquiring knowledge of our minds. The debate arises when an epistemological position disregards the important roles of each source of knowledge in the knowing process, or when a rationalist criticizes the empiricist view, claiming that all our ideas originate with sense experience only, without any cooperation of the role of consciousness or vice versa. How did the epistemological philosophers answer this fundamental question? How is knowing possible? Let us have a survey of them. Rene Descartes, a towering figure of the 17th century, is a champion of rationalism. Descartes believed that true knowledge could be attained through the power of reason alone, independent of sensory experience. His cogito, I think therefore I am, asserted the primacy of the thinking mind as the foundation of knowledge and certitude. His systematic method of doubt was just procedural and temporary. He sought to establish his ground source of knowledge, and not from all sources of knowledge in the history of truth filled with doubts and suspicions of its manipulations and deceptions. He included in his radical doubt the contents of science, religion, and even math, which was his favorite. He came up only with clear and distinct ideas to arrive at through reason and attain genuine knowledge. His claim of a possible evil genius in knowing prompted him to argue that even the perfection of math can be a deception. Maybe I was tricked into believing that 2 plus plus is 4. His point was that all his skepticism to the sources of knowledge seeks only to find certitude, because there was so much manipulation of truth during the medieval period. Lesson learned from Descartes: I must be certain in my search for truth. Epistemology is not just seeking the truth, but must come with certitude. Yes, Descartes can answer our fundamental question that knowing is possible, but make sure it is certain. His method of doubt says he will never accept anything as true unless he is certain. John Locke of the 17th century claimed that the mind is like a tabula rasa at birth, or like an empty tablet since birth. But this empty mind is slowly acquiring knowledge through experience using our senses. Locke answers our fundamental question. We know because we experience objects using our senses. The objects actively present themselves to the subject, and the ideas formed in the mind represent the objects outside or the experience. However, as to the certitude of knowledge, Locke does not guarantee that the ideas from experience are right, because we don't experience the object directly, because objects are external to us. Objects have their objectivity separate from the knowing subject. Similar ideas to answer the question were from David Hume. In Hume's Epistemology, experience is important to warrant knowledge of things called impressions. It must be a direct and present experience. It must be immediate. Outside this criterion of truth, my experience does not qualify for vividness and forcefulness, thus failing to warrant certitude. I am certain when I only have the impression of something. All abstract ideas, including the idea of God and perfection, cannot have an impression on the state of affairs to be matters of fact. They remain opinions and are doubtful. George Berkeley, in the 17th century, took a similar view to John Locke in his understanding of experience, but this time he emphasized the active role of the subject, the perceiving mind. His philosophical principle, to be is to be perceived, demonstrates that perceiving the object guarantees existence. There must be an experience of perceiving to warrant my ideas from experience. Ideas of something need the presence of perceivers. Objects of my experience exist only when the subject perceives them. Berkeley was an idealist and an immaterialist in his philosophy. The dominance of the knowing subject takes the lead in this epistemological journey. For Berkeley, knowing is possible when the human subject is possible, either human or divine. The presence of the perceiving mind is important. Lastly, let us look at Immanuel Kant's epistemology. His work on transcendental idealism became a revolutionary solution to answer the epistemological debate of how knowing is possible. Kant proposed a synthesis and found balance in finding sources of knowledge. He brought up the importance of innate ideas in the process of knowing from the rationalist perspective, saying that these categories of the mind are just principles of knowing, something that exists a priori to any experience. Our experience of things is shaped by how we perceive them based on these categories built in our minds since birth. He borrowed this from the rationalist perspective. Hence, experience is equally important as to the built-in innate ideas. How is knowing possible for Kant? We need the cooperation of intellect and experience to develop a synthetic a priori knowledge. This brings us to a crucial point. Are you a rationalist? Or are you an empiricist? Or are you both? Some takeaways. First, let me bring you to this conclusion. Knowing the world is not just about uncovering the reality out there, but also about interpreting it through our complex frameworks of perceptions. Our mind takes these frameworks and understands the world through them. We interpret the world because of these fundamental frameworks, rooted in the categories of the mind and developed from the day-to-day experience of things. Second, two sources are better than one, just as teamwork has proven to be the best way of doing our chores in the actual world. Epistemological study like this is an invitation to explore, question the limits of our understanding, and engage with the world thoughtfully and reflectively. Let's embark on this journey of exploration together. Thanks for watching. Follow my channel and promote this advocacy.